Oz, when we were talking before about this whole dynamic of the Holy Spirit invading the culture, and you brought up the fact that we are change agents who are called to create solutions in the lives of the people we touch. There's a moment in the life of Jesus in John 4 where in the King James he says to his disciples, I must needs go through Samaria, which is forbidden territory in the mindset of all the religious people of his day. So he's about to cross a threshold and go into forbidden territory and meet a woman and talk to a woman, which is again forbidden territory, and be the difference that makes the difference. So take that and run with it.
Yeah, and before I do that, you know, Hollywood is a great example of where we gave up on that years ago.
Yeah.
And now God says, I haven't given up on that. You know, I want my people to be raised up in that cultural mountain, because I'm going to use that mountain to shift, really, the rest of the mountains.
Sure.
But the Samaritan woman is a great story. I'm glad you asked me about that, because I really love that story for a great case study of culture change. Because here he is, and he comes to this well, and he's talking to someone he should not be talking to, right? She's not of the same political party as the disciples, and she is a woman, and he's not supposed to be talking to a Samaritan woman. And here he is engaging with her, really at a heart level. And then he does something interesting. He then says something to her after she makes a few statements. He has an insight into her life, and he gets a word of knowledge. And I think that that's another good example for us in the marketplace, that we've got to raise our game another level.
Oh, yeah.
And as we're in the marketplace, we're not going to win people by arguments or persuasion. You know, it's going to happen because of a genuine life that they can see something operating in us that they cannot see otherwise. And it's not about theology. And that's what we're seeing in Hollywood, because we saw the power of God move there, that broke through the religious spirit. It broke through preconceived ideas about, you know, what they thought Christianity was, and they were invited in. And I believe that that's what we've got a whole group of people in the marketplace that we've got giants in the market, you know, a remnant that have been silent for so long, and God's now raising them up. And the marketplace is where real change can happen. And so as we talk about these 7 spheres or 7 cultural mountains, these are the places that shift culture, because we realize that these are where values are identified, and people really take values from these areas. And it only takes 2 to 3% operating at the top of one of these cultural mountains to shift the entire mountain.
Oz, you've written a brand new book called Change Agents, How to Be the Difference That Makes the Difference, or the One Who Makes the Difference. And in light of everything we've been talking about, in the book you talk about the 6 stages that God takes us through to become a change agent. Talk a little bit about it.
Well, I've really been working on this book for the last 3 years, and it's really divided.
Actually, the book's been working on you through processing.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it has been a process, because I see my life through this book, and you know, it's divided into 3 sections. The first section is, how did we lose culture? You know, what contributed to that? And the second part are 6 stages that I identified that every change agent in the Bible, and even the ones I work with today, people who have made significant change in culture and through Christ working in their life, they've gone through all these 6 stages. And then the third section of the book deals with each of the 7 cultural mountains. Where are we? How we lose them? What do we have to do to gain them back? And what does it look like if we're successful? And so I'm really excited about what this book can do for folks. But the 6 stages are, the first stage is the recruitment. And that's where we talked about in the first session about so often the entry door to our destiny comes through a crisis. The second part is character development, like Joseph. Joseph went through a season of character development. You know, God had to invest in this young man's life, but he wanted a man that had humility. And Moses, humility is a very high value to God. And you can get it voluntarily or involuntarily. And so it's better to go the first round.
Right, I hear you.
And then the third phase is the isolation phase. And we don't really hear that much. But David went through the cave of Adullam. All right? And so here's a guy that was anointed to be king. And what does he do for the about next 13 years? He flees the Saul of sword. What kind of training ground is that, you know? And so he gets to this cave, and he is really at the low point of his life. He has to fake madness in front of the king of Gath, and Gath was the place that he defeated a very great warrior, Goliath. And so there he is in that cave. And he wrote 3 psalms in that cave, and it said, finally in the one of the descriptions of him, that he was not to stay in that cave, but to go into the place of Judah, which means praise. And then the 4th stage is the cross phase. If that's not enough, you would think, well, wasn't the 2nd stage enough? But God takes us really to the end of ourselves. And so often, you know, even when we want to go to the cross, so often it requires a 3rd person to put that 3rd nail in. Yeah. And so often betrayal is often that. And then the 4th stage is where we begin to move then in our destiny. We become change agents by solving societal problems, be a solution to a problem. Culture doesn't care, and I first learned this from Lance. Culture does not care who solves the problem. They just want their problem solved. And then the final stage is network. You know, God always worked through networks of people. And Lance and I have been walking in a group now called As One. We realize that we can do more together than alone. And Jesus did that. And there was a guy named Jeremiah, or William Wilberforce, you know, and he had the Clapham group, and he had 69 world-changing initiatives. And so those are the 6 stages that I'm seeing in every change agent God uses. And you'll see them in the scriptures as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Into this final segment of dialogue, we are going to enter in a number of moments as we talk into a time of concerted prayer for the power of God to be fully released. Oz, you have been gifted to work in the marketplace and to touch marketplace leaders. There are businessmen and women all over the world that are watching right now that know that they're called to some level of fruitfulness and greatness in the kingdom. And yet, because of everything that's going on economically and the global shaking, they're feeling like failures. They're wondering, how come I'm in this situation? If God's blessed me, how come everything seems to be going south? What do you say to them?
Well, first, Mark, I think we need to understand that both God and Satan want you dead, but for different reasons, right? You know, Satan wants to kill your destiny. God wants to kill your old man.
Right.
So that you can truly become the person he created you to be. And so often that process, you know, when the enemy wounds us in our childhood, you know, he tried to kill Jesus, tried to kill Moses. If he can't kill you, he'll try to wound you so badly that you're no good to anyone and you can't relate to God or other people.
Right.
And so what I believe that we need to understand is we need to understand the entry doors of where some of those things come in that turned us into slaves and orphans. Because ultimately what God's trying to do, even through the crisis, is to let you come back and revisit that pain so that you can become free of it. Because he really wants to heal you of that. And so I believe that that's what he does in these crises. So I would say to the man or woman that maybe you've gone through a significant crisis. Maybe you've lost a business. Maybe you've gone through a divorce. Maybe there's something that's really, just really taken you off. And you're even questioning the love of God. And if you're a slave, you question the love of God. And you know, Joseph, the reason I believe Joseph was so effective in walking through his adversity was he was a good son. And it says that Joseph was father to Pharaoh. How does a 30-year-old become father to Pharaoh? It's because he was a good son. And so I would encourage those that are in the audience that if you've gone through adversity and you're at a really hard place, just turn it over to him. Really seek him, and you'll be amazed the redemptive power of God and how, you know, the whole reason I'm doing what I'm doing now is I went through a 7-year pit experience that took me really to the bottom, and it birthed me writing something called TGIF, Today God is First, that goes to a couple 100,000 people a day by email. But it was in that season as I pressed into Him. So that would be my encouragement to those in the marketplace today.
Powerful.
A miracle for you.
Yeah. In this last few moments, Oz, are you getting any words of knowledge for those that are watching?
My heart just really is the businessman. That businessman that you are so depressed over that business that you're losing. And the world is not over because of that. And just turn that over to the Lord. And you will see God meet you at that place. And He turns the valley of Achor into a door of hope. Achor means trouble. And if you will turn that into Him, He will turn that seems the most difficult crisis in your whole life into a door of hope. And you'll be amazed at how He's going to turn that into something that you will see it was the greatest blessing for you, for what you're going to have deposited in your life through that experience.